They say he might be the dumbest emperor in world history. When officials told him, "The people are starving, they can't even afford rice," he seriously replied, "Then why don't they just eat meat?" This was Emperor Sima Zheng, the second ruler of China's Western Jin dynasty, a man whose intelligence was so low that his wife had to cover for him just to keep him on the throne. But the cost was enormous. His incompetence triggered one of the bloodiest and most chaotic eras in Chinese history. An emperor whose hobby was stealing. Yes, you heard that right. This was Emperor Lu Zi of the Eastern Han dynasty. On paper, he was the emperor. In reality, all real power was controlled by the regent Liang Ji. Lu Zi was nothing more than a puppet. So how did he fight back? He did something no one expected. He publicly turned theft into his hobby. He openly visited officials' homes and stole small items right in front of everyone. Awkward? Absolutely. To avoid embarrassing the emperor, Liang Ji gave a strange order. The guards were told to pretend they saw nothing. And that was the mistake. Using this privilege, Lu Zi entered Liang Ji's residence and secretly stole evidence of treason. With proof in hand, the emperor struck back. Liang Ji was removed, and Lu Zi finally reclaimed real power. What looked like a bizarre habit was actually a carefully planned political trap. Have you ever seen an emperor who was terrified of his wife? It wasn't because of love. The real reason is unbelievable. He was Zhao Dun, the 12th emperor of the Song dynasty. His empress, Lady Li, had an extreme level of control. One time, while washing his hands, Zhao Dun casually praised a maid's hands, saying they were fair and delicate. The next day, the empress sent him an exquisite box. When he opened it, inside were the maid's severed hands. Because of long-term oppression from his father during childhood, Zhao Dun developed an extremely weak personality. Faced with the empress's cruelty, he didn't even have the courage to question her. Later, the empress even killed his favorite concubine. At the concubine's funeral, this man, who ruled over millions, completely broke down in public due to overwhelming guilt and fear and lost his sanity. The empress seized power, and the mad emperor was eventually forced to abdicate, spending the rest of his life in the shadows. If not for this scandal, the Tang dynasty might never have existed. Late in the Sui dynasty, China was in chaos. Li Yuan, a powerful general, could take the throne, but he hesitated. His son Li Shimin set a daring trap. Two of the emperor's concubines were disguised as maids and sent to drink with Li Yuan. The next morning, Li Yuan discovered the truth. He had slept with the emperor's women. Terrified, he had only one choice: revolt. And that gamble made him the founder of the Tang dynasty. The most absurd emperor in ancient China, Emperor Xuan of Zhao, Yuan, ascended the throne at just 21. He was notorious for his obsession with beauty. Even in ancient China, where polygamy was allowed, an emperor usually had only one empress, with other women serving as concubines. But Yuan instantly appointed 5 empresses, almost overturning traditional court rules. Not only that, he reigned for just 1 year before passing the throne to his 6-year-old son, all so he could fully indulge in pleasure. He even ordered officials' children to stop marrying so he could pick beauties first. In the end, this absurd emperor died from debauchery at only 22. He deserved it.
The most absurd emperor, Lu Jiye, is known as one of the most outrageous emperors in Chinese history. During his reign, he lived in reckless debauchery. Not only did he force palace maids to remain unclothed for his pleasure, but he also cruelly tortured and killed several of his uncles. Even more shocking, he seized his own aunt and sister. His absurdity and brutality reached an unbelievable level. In the year 466, because of his countless crimes, he was assassinated at the age of just 17. It can be said he brought about his own destruction.
The most absurd emperor in history. Xiao Baozhuan was an emperor of the Southern Shi dynasty. After losing his mother at an early age, he became withdrawn and disliked interacting with others. After ascending the throne, he enjoyed traveling outside the palace. However, he hated encountering people. Anyone he saw during his outings was often executed. Worse still, he brutally killed ministers who tried to persuade him to govern the country properly. In the year 501, after 4 years of foolish and cruel rule, the southern Shi collapsed in a rebellion. Xiao Baozhuan was killed at the age of only 19. The most absurd emperor in history. He was the 9th emperor of the Han dynasty, Liu Hu. According to historical records, he ruled for only 27 days, yet managed to commit 1,127 outrageous acts. After ascending the throne, he spent his days hunting and feasting, arbitrarily changing palace rules, demanding gifts from officials, and even imprisoning ministers who dared to offer advice. Finally, the powerful minister Huo Guang had enough. He joined forces with other court officials and deposed the young emperor. Yu He reigned for just 27 days, but his notorious antics have been ridiculed for over 1,000 years. Truly, one of the shortest and craziest reigns in Chinese history. Emperor Wu of Han, Liu Che, was a brilliant ruler, but overconfident in medicine. Legend says he was fascinated by healing and wanted to create his own prescriptions. One day, he suddenly invented a formula. Ministers prepared all kinds of herbs, but the resulting potion tasted so awful it could make anyone cry. To save face, Liu Che added sugar, turning it into a sweet medicine. The ministers looked at each other, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Even the greatest emperor had his hilarious, quirky side. When an empire collapsed and its emperor was dragged away as a prisoner, you'd expect rage, revenge, or a broken man. But he chose something else. He chose to keep having children. Meet Jia Ji, the 8th emperor of the Northern Song dynasty, and the emperor with the most children in Chinese history. In total, he fathered 38 sons and 42 daughters, a shocking 80 children. And here's the twist. 14 of them were born after he was captured by the enemy. Sometimes, real history is far more dramatic than any movie. Remember the emperor I mentioned before, the one with 80 children? Yes, Zhao Ji, the 8th emperor of the Northern Song dynasty. But here's the twist. His real legacy isn't the number of kids, it's his insane artistic talent. Zhao Ji wasn't just good at painting, he created his own style, leaving behind over 20 masterpieces that museums fight to display. And his calligraphy? Next level. He invented a brand new script known as slender gold, sharp, elegant, and almost alive like lines carved from gold wire. Politically, he was a failed emperor, but in the world of art, he was a legend. If Zhao Ji lived today, he'd be a national treasure, a superstar artist whose works would break auction records. He stole his own son's fiancée. Not a rumor. It really happened. And he was an emperor. Li Yuanhao, the founding emperor of Western Sha, a powerful ruler who built an empire, but lost to his own desire. He set his eyes on his son's fiancée and took her, just like that. He brought her into the palace and made her his queen. But his son never forgot the humiliation. One night, while the emperor was asleep, his son struck with a blade. The emperor tried to escape, but it was too late. He lost his nose and soon died from blood loss. In the end, he died inside the betrayal he created himself. The king who lost his empire for a smile. In ancient China, King Yu of the Zhao dynasty had a favorite beauty, Lady Bao. But there was a problem. She never smiled. To make her laugh, the king lit the warning beacons on the city walls. These beacons were only meant for emergencies, to call the lords and armies when the empire was under attack. When the lords rushed to the capital with their soldiers, they found no enemy at all. It was just the king's joke to amuse Lady Bao. She finally smiled. The king repeated this trick several times. So when real enemies came, the lords thought it was another prank. No one came to help. The capital fell, the king was killed, and the great Western Zhao dynasty ended. The emperor who loved drama more than ruling, Li Kansu. In 923, he ascended the throne after years of war, but his passion for theater far outweighed his duties. He scoured the nation for talented performers, brought them to the palace, and even performed himself under a stage name. Those who performed well could even be rewarded with official positions, which threw the entire government into chaos. In the end, he died in a rebellion caused by the disorder. Hobbies are fine, but don't let them take over your life. This man was the emperor's own uncle, but inside the palace, he had only one nickname, the Pig King. Because he was overweight, the emperor openly mocked him and even locked him in a cage, feeding him pig food for amusement. A royal prince was treated like livestock. He endured this humiliation for years, until an opportunity appeared. He launched a coup, killed his own nephew, and seized the throne for himself. He was Liu Yu, the 7th emperor of the Liu Song dynasty in southern China. The former pig king had finally become emperor. But power only made him more extreme. He began eating obsessively. His favorite dish was fish soaked in honey, and he could consume over 10 kilograms in a single sitting. He feasted day and night without restraint. In the end, this emperor who had successfully taken revenge did not die by the sword. He literally ate himself to death. Sometimes, a man can overthrow the person who humiliated him, but he cannot overthrow his own desires.
This is what some people call a 2,000-year-old aeroplane model. And its creator may be one of the most mysterious emperors in Chinese history, Wang Mang, the only ruler of the Qin dynasty. He ruled for just 15 years, yet left behind ideas and systems that feel completely out of place in the ancient world. He promoted equality for all and attempted to abolish slavery, concepts that Europe wouldn't seriously discuss until more than 1,000 years later. He also introduced reforms that looked surprisingly modern: loan systems, currency regulations, and land reforms. But the strangest part comes from archaeology. From the era of his rule, researchers discovered a bronze object resembling an aeroplane model and a highly precise vernier caliper. These are not the kinds of technologies you would expect from 2,000 years ago. No wonder some people say Wang Mang wasn't an ancient ruler, he was a time traveler. Subscribe to A Different Story, one story every day.
He called a man 10 years younger than himself father just to become emperor. In 936 AD, the general Shi Jingtong tried to overthrow his own father-in-law, the emperor, but after rebelling, he realized he simply couldn't win. With no way out, he made an unbelievable decision. He turned to his country's enemy for help. His offer was clear. After taking the throne, he would give up vast territories, pay tribute every year, and even recognize the younger foreign ruler as his father. And somehow, it worked. With the help of this younger father, he successfully became emperor. But the land he gave away became a critical weakness for the dynasty over the next 200 years. So the question is, was he a master strategist or the man who sold out his own country? Imagine being the most powerful man in the world with endless gold and palaces. Now, imagine your only wish every morning is to become a beggar. This was the bizarre reality of Emperor Gao Wei of northern Qi. While other rulers spent their time in court, he built a literal slum inside his magnificent palace. He would strip off his dragon robes, put on filthy, stinking rags, and hold a chipped bowl to beg in the sun. It wasn't to help the poor or understand his people. It was a twisted role-play game to cure his boredom. To him, poverty was just a fun costume. But outside the palace walls, his empire was actually collapsing. Real beggars were starving to death in the streets, while the beggar emperor spent a fortune pretending to be one of them. Is this the ultimate sign of a psychopath? Let me know in the comments. Forget resumes. Forget experience. In the late Tang dynasty, the only way to get a promotion was your gaming skills. Meet Emperor Xizong, the ultimate polo addict. In 880 AD, a top-tier governor position opened up. Instead of interviews or background checks, the emperor had one rule: whoever plays the best polo gets the job. A man named Chen Jingxuan scored a legendary goal and went from a nobody to a powerful ruler overnight. They gambled the fate of millions on a ball game. The emperor won the match, but he lost the entire empire. If your job promotion depended on your video game rank today, what's your title? CEO or intern? Let me know.
Can you imagine people starving to death, not because of famine, but because of beauty standards? In ancient China, the king of the state of Chu was obsessed with thin waists, not admired, obsessed. To please the king, officials, concubines, and servants began starving themselves, because the less they ate, the slimmer their waists became, and the slimmer the waist, the higher the chance of favor and survival. The result? People died, not from lack of food, but from obsession. When one man's personal preference becomes everyone's survival rule, is that still beauty, or is it power gone wrong?
The artist ruined by his throne. When an artist's soul is trapped by the crown, tragedy is inevitable. Li Yu, the emperor of southern Tang, was a master of literature, poetry, and music, a true artistic genius. But he had no interest in ruling his kingdom, and eventually southern Tang fell. Suffering became the soil for his art. The sorrow of losing his country fueled his creativity, and he wrote countless poems mourning his fallen homeland, poems that would be remembered for centuries. Yet these very verses angered the new emperor. Li Yu was ultimately poisoned to death, his artistic talent and life crushed under the weight of the throne, leaving behind an eternal elegy of sorrow and beauty.
He was the most scandalous emperor in history. A man who started as a great ruler but ended as a monster with zero boundaries. Meet Liu Jun. After an unexpected rise to power, he initially ruled with brilliance, but soon his dark nature took over. He seized his own 4 cousins as concubines, forcing his own uncle into a bloody rebellion. But it gets darker. Ancient records claim his depravity knew no limits, alleging that he didn't even spare his own mother. Under his rule, a powerful empire crumbled into chaos. He transformed the imperial palace into a house of sins, earning his spot as one of the most hated villains in history.
This Chinese emperor died from taking too much aphrodisiac. His name was Emperor Cheng of the Han Dynasty. He was obsessed with 2 famous sisters, Zhao Feiyan and Zhao Hede. Night after night, the emperor chased pleasure. But soon his body became weak. So the sisters gave him a powerful tonic to restore his strength. The emperor became addicted. He kept taking more and more, until one night he took too much. And the emperor of China died in Zhao Hede's bed. One of the most powerful men in the world was killed by his own desire.
The emperor who wrote the most poems in Chinese history. Poetry was one of ancient China's greatest cultural achievements, with countless masterpieces and legendary poets. Yet the person who wrote the most poems wasn't a famous poet. It was Emperor Qianlong himself. He loved literature, and especially poetry, leaving behind over 40,000 poems in his lifetime. But the quality? Well, not great. Even though he was surrounded by ministers praising his work, not a single poem became a timeless classic. Have you ever seen the most destructive like button in history? Meet Emperor Qianlong. This man owned over 1,000 personal stamps. His logic for collecting art was simple. If I love it, I'm putting my name on every single inch of it. Take this masterpiece, The Timely Clearing After Snowfall. It only has 28 characters, but he covered it with over 170 stamps. He didn't just stamp it, he wrote his own reviews all over the margins. Imagine someone taking the Mona Lisa, covering it with emojis, and writing a Yelp review on her face. So, what do you think? Was he a passionate collector or the world's most elite vandal? By the way, I love your likes and comments as much as Qianlong loved his stamps, so feel free to leave your mark below. The most diligent emperor. The ultimate grind worker. Emperor Yongzheng was known as the most diligent ruler in all of Chinese history. His exhausting life came from the empire's deep financial troubles and widespread government corruption. Because of his suspicious nature, he refused to trust others and insisted on handling everything himself. During his 13 years on the throne, he worked up to 16 to 18 hours a day and slept less than 4. He allowed himself just 1 day off each year, his birthday. Every single day, he personally wrote over 8,000 characters while managing countless state affairs. In the end, years of relentless overwork took his life. Yongzheng literally died from diligence, the emperor who worked himself to death, China's stingiest emperor. The Doguang Emperor of China's Qing dynasty was famous for his extreme frugality. But the more frugal he became, the poorer the country grew. To promote thrift among the people, he wore patched clothes and reduced his meals from dozens of dishes to just 4. Even the empress's birthday could only be celebrated with a single bowl of noodles. But his frugality didn't fix the empire's finances. Officials, eager to please, bought patched clothes, while palace suppliers inflated food prices by hundreds of times. The result? The stricter the emperor was with himself, the more waste and corruption spread.
Daoguang lived a life of extreme thrift, yet he never understood why the empire remained financially broken.
He was considered one of the most pleasure-obsessed emperors in history, reportedly entertaining more than 30 concubines in a single night. This was Zhao Qi of the Song dynasty. After becoming emperor, he devoted himself almost entirely to entertainment and beauty, handing over the management of state affairs to corrupt officials. Historical records note that on one occasion, he summoned over 30 consorts in a single night. After 10 years on the throne, his body, drained by excess, finally gave out. He died at just 33 years old. Not long after his death, the dynasty fell. What happens when an emperor becomes obsessed with running a business? Meet Emperor Liu Hong of the Eastern Han Dynasty, a man known for scandals, indulgence, and the most bizarre hobby you can imagine. He literally role-played as a shop owner. He turned the imperial palace into a giant mall, dragged concubines and eunuchs to play customers, and priced all his goods ridiculously high. And guess what? No one dared refuse to buy from the emperor, so he made a fortune and loved every second of it. But his obsession didn't stop there. Small profits weren't enough. He started selling government positions. Yes, anyone with money could become an official. He even held auctions for high-ranking jobs. His absurd business empire didn't just entertain him, it accelerated the fall of an entire dynasty. History has some wild stories. Subscribe me, one story every day.
Beaten up for writing a long essay? Zhu Yuanzhang, the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty, wasn't highly educated, but he loved hearing his ministers' advice on how to govern the country. In ancient China, officials often liked to show off their talent by writing long, elegant essays for the emperor. One day, a minister named Ru Taisu submitted a report that was 17,000 words long. Zhu Yuanzhang tried to read it himself, but soon got a headache, so he ordered someone else to read it aloud. After a long while, the reader still hadn't finished. The furious emperor finally lost his patience and ordered the minister to be beaten. But here's the funny part. After the punishment, Zhu Yuanzhang still listened to the entire essay and even accepted some of the suggestions. From then on, all the ministers learned their lesson. When writing to the emperor, keep it short and simple.
The emperor's favorite soup. You'll never guess what it was. Zhu Yuanzhang, the Ming dynasty's founding emperor, who had tasted every delicacy in the world, craved in his old age a dish no one had ever heard of: pearl, jade, and white jade soup. The imperial chefs were baffled. One even tossed real pearls and jade into the pot. Zhu took a sip, flew into a rage, and ordered the empire to search for someone who could make it. At last, two beggars cooked up a shabby soup of wilted leaves and sour tofu. Zhu drank it, smiled faintly, and his eyes grew wet. It turned out this was the very soup he had once been given when he was a starving beggar. The kind stranger had casually named it pearl, jade, and white jade soup. No matter how lavish the imperial feast, nothing could surpass that humble bowl of soup from his hardest days.
China's missing emperor, the mystery of Zhu Yunwen. Zhu Yunwen was the second emperor of the Ming dynasty, took the throne in 1398. But his uncle, Zhu Di, was furious when the young emperor tried to strip away his military power. So Zhu Di rebelled. For 3 long years, civil war tore the empire apart. In the end, Zhu Di's army stormed the imperial palace and won. But inside the palace, flames were rising. The emperor's residence was on fire, and Zhu Yunwen was gone. No body was ever found. Some said he shaved his head and became a monk. Others believed he escaped by sea, living the rest of his life in hiding. To this day, the mysterious disappearance of Emperor Zhu Yunwen remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the Ming dynasty. Zhu Haozhao, the Ming emperor, was one of the most rebellious rulers in Chinese history. He treated the palace like a prison, building a leopard house outside the walls, filled with beasts and beauties, where he indulged in endless pleasures. He even dug secret tunnels to sneak out, crowned himself a general, and staged fake victories with prisoners just to show off. Lost in wine, women, and games, he trusted corrupt officials while the empire fell into misery. In the end, during a southern tour, he fell into the water, was badly shaken, and died at only 31, leaving no heir, just chaos. Zhu Haozhao
Was he a free-spirited rebel or simply a reckless tyrant? What did you think? The Jiajing Emperor of the Ming Dynasty ruled for 45 years, yet spent 27 of them avoiding court, second only to his grandson, the Wanli Emperor, whom we mentioned in a previous video. His most bizarre trait was his obsession with Taoism. In middle age, he became obsessed with alchemy and immortality. He filled the palace with Taoist temples, recruited alchemists, and spent his days studying elixirs. To collect virgin blood for his experiments, he forced palace maids to take special potions, leading to multiple deaths. In 1542, the maids could no longer endure and attempted to strangle him in his sleep. The assassination failed, and Jiajing became even more paranoid, moving out of the Forbidden City and refusing to return for over 20 years. A Taoist-obsessed emperor, reckless and paranoid, yet still holding supreme power? What do you think of him? A single assassination attempt changed how Chinese emperors lived. In 1542, 16 palace maids and 2 imperial consorts conspired to kill the Jiajing Emperor of the Ming Dynasty. But why? Because the Jiajing Emperor believed a horrifying superstition that the menstrual blood of virgin girls could grant him immortality. To collect this so-called pure blood, he forbade palace maids from eating real food, forcing them to survive only on leaves and dew. More than 200 young women died under these conditions. Driven to despair, the surviving maids decided to fight back. On the night of November 27, 1542, while the emperor was asleep, they threw a rope around his neck and attempted to strangle him. But in their panic, they tied a dead knot. The rope couldn't tighten. The emperor only passed out. Other servants heard the commotion and rescued him. The assassination failed. The incident shocked the entire empire, and its consequences lasted far beyond the Ming Dynasty. Centuries later, the Qing emperors used this event as a warning. They created a strict survival rule. An emperor was forbidden to spend the night in any concubine's residence. Instead, every evening, a concubine had to be physically carried into the emperor's quarters and carried out afterward. All for one purpose: to keep the emperor safe from another deadly plot. We've talked before about how strange the Ming Dynasty Emperor Jiajing was, but this might be the most disturbing part of his life. Jiajing truly believed he was not a normal human. He believed he was a god. And his sons? They were gods too. In his mind, 2 gods could never meet. If they did, disaster would follow. So to protect himself and his children, Jiajing made a shocking decision. He refused to see his own sons for years. Then one day, he broke the rule and attended his crown prince's ceremony. Not long after, the prince suddenly died. Instead of doubting himself, Jiajing became even more convinced. From that moment on, even when his sons were seriously ill, he refused to visit them. Inside the palace, the emperor and his children lived like strangers. History is often stranger and darker than fiction. Subscribe to a different story, one real story every day.
The Emperor Who Died from Desire. Zhu Zaiho, the 12th emperor of the Ming Dynasty, took the throne in 1567. At first, he ruled the country fairly well. But his obsession with women soon turned his reign into a disaster. Historical records say that in just 2.5 years, he officially married 13 consorts, almost one new wife every 2 months. And that doesn't even include the countless women he took without ceremony. The emperor had a special preference for women from southern China. He ordered officials to search for young and beautiful women and bring them to the palace for his pleasure. The fear spread so widely that in many southern towns, families rushed to marry off their daughters early just to keep them safe from being chosen. After 5 years of this indulgent, reckless life, the emperor's body finally gave out. At just 35 years old, Zhu Zaiho died from overindulgence.
Imagine a ruler who didn't show up to work for 28 years. Emperor Wanli of the Ming Dynasty, Zhu Yijun, ascended the throne at just 10 years old. He reigned for 48 years, yet spent 28 of them neglecting state affairs, earning the title of the absentee emperor. Early in his reign, he governed competently, but after clashing with his officials, he entered a decades-long Cold War, skipping court sessions, ignoring memorials, and refusing to appoint officials. Even more bizarre, though he refused to govern, he didn't relinquish power. Through eunuchs and a network of spies, he still controlled state affairs, sparking widespread resentment. This strike emperor spent his days drinking to pass the time, weighed over 200 pounds, and needed eunuchs to support him while walking. Was Emperor Wanli a brilliant but lazy ruler, or simply absurd to the extreme? A Chinese emperor died after taking 2 mysterious red pills. It happened in 1620. The emperor, Tai Chong, had just taken the throne, but he was already seriously ill. Then, one day, a court official arrived with a strange medicine, 2 small red pills. The emperor took them. Soon after, he said he felt much better. But that night, the emperor suddenly collapsed. By the next morning, he was dead. He had ruled for only 29 days. To this day, historians still debate the truth. Were the red pills a cure or poison? He never wanted to be emperor. He was just an ignored child in the palace. Until one day, his grandfather died, his father died, and suddenly the throne fell onto his shoulders. He had no education, no training, yet every morning mountains of documents waited for him. Pressure, boredom, isolation. So he looked for comfort, not in politics, but in someone he trusted since childhood, his wet nurse. And he found joy not in ruling, but in woodwork. He became the emperor who married his own nurse and spent his days as a carpenter king. His name was Zhu Yushao, the emperor who preferred tools over power. He worked harder than any emperor before him, and that's exactly why he failed. Chongzhen, the last emperor of China's Ming dynasty, inherited an empire already dying. But Chongzhen didn't give up. He didn't escape into pleasure. He didn't surrender power. He chose obsession. Day and night he read reports himself. He made decisions himself. He commanded wars himself. He believed one thing: if I work hard enough, I can save this country. But history is cruel. What destroyed the Ming dynasty wasn't laziness, it was incompetence at the top. Every wrong decision stacked on the last one. Every attempt to fix the system only pushed it closer to collapse. When Beijing finally fell, Chongzhen didn't flee, he hanged himself. Not because he didn't try. When the direction is wrong, working harder only makes the fall faster.
After seeing so many bizarre stories of these outrageous emperors, which one do you find the most unbelievable? Leave a comment and let me know what you think.
This is a different story. See you next time.